is all good. We have to take advantage of these beautiful days. If we've learned nothing during this, is that we have to take advantage of things when they present themselves. So I do not fault anyone for enjoying the day. So today we are continuing on with the I Love Mission campaign sponsored webinars through the District of Mission. So we thank the district for pitching in and partnering with us. And we are going to be talking about a very important topic. I am going to miss not being able to say the toilet paper hoarding with this conversation. So I'm going to miss that. And I'm going to hand it over to the brilliant Donna King to take over this. And we'll let you go from there.
Thank you very much. My name is Donna King. I'm the owner of Beyond Balance Books, and I'm the CFO of Connect Now Business Network Limited. And I also do some bookkeeping training sessions for Community Futures and for these guys here at the Chamber of Commerce. So today, yes, we are going to be talking about why hoarding your business cash is no smarter than hoarding toilet paper. Before we get right into it, is everyone able to hear me okay? Just like a little thumbs up or a nod, or everything good? And we can see the screen share okay? And if you see me not always looking at the camera, looking over here, it's because I'm reading just as much as you guys are as we go through our little presentation here. So before we go any further, I do get told I have to put in our little legal disclaimer here that Beyond Balance Books and its affiliates, today its affiliates are the Chamber of Commerce, do not provide tax or legal advice. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied upon for tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. That is the most wordy and long word lengthy slide that you're going to see all day. So don't panic. This is not death by PowerPoint. But let's get into it. Why? Not just myself, but many people in the accounting world believe that hoarding cash in times of stress or times of panic is not the right tactic to take. And in fact, we'd already decided on doing this topic when I saw a colleague of mine had written a very similar post from his own business shortly afterwards. So I'm not the only one preaching this at the moment. There are a number of us preaching this right now. So in times like this, whether it happens to be a global pandemic or any other stresses in your specific business, we sometimes, as perhaps slightly smaller business owners, or if we're self-employed, sole proprietors, the smaller business more often than not tend to go into a bit of panic mode. So the stress levels go up. It could be some other sort of traumatic event has happened. And it usually comes from a sense of fear. So we call it giving it a knee-jerk reaction. Something like this happens and the knee-jerk comes up and we say, that's it, we've got to protect our money. We've got to protect our cash. Let's cut back, cut back, cut back. But I actually looked up what, the official terminology for what a knee-jerk reaction is, and it says a quick reaction that does not allow time to consider something carefully or fully consider the ramifications of the changes that are being made. So before you give a knee-jerk reaction to something, assess your situation, and if you need it, assistance is often available, whether that be like right now through all of the government funding that we're getting, or even if it is just your business outside of everything else. Quite often you see it coming ahead of time, you can go and get that business loan, you can go and get a grant, or you can change things yourself and not have to worry about squeezing your cash too much. So what should we be doing then? Should we be saving or should we be spending? Obviously, if your cash is beginning to get a little tighter, or you know that revenues are not going to be coming in as they were, cutting some costs isn't such a bad idea. But generally, if your head goes straight to, we need to cut costs quickly, it comes from a place of scarcity. Again, it comes from a place of fear, as opposed to, well, I'm comfortable actually in understanding my numbers and I'm comfortable with where my business is right now. So when you look at it from a spending standpoint, it's I still intend to grow. Spending, it comes from a place of growth, and the two kind of go hand in hand. When you grow, you spend more. When you spend more, you grow. So it's kind of the chicken and egg situation. So in order for your business to grow, you have to spend. But I have put in there that in times like this, you save on the personal front, spend on the business front, right? And often that's what allows you to do it. If you can cut back on your own spending as business owners, our business income and our personal income are so closely linked that it's possible to cut back a little bit on the personal front and make sure that there's still some cash around on the business front so that we can still spend some. So where should you be cutting spending and where should you not be cutting spending? So my little sad face right here, please don't cut costs on your advertising or your accounting. And the reason I mention those two in particular is quite often those are the first two to get cut. People cut back on, you know, their promotional materials or, you know, the advertising that they have, and without thinking forward, without thinking, okay, where am I going to be if I cut this advertising cost? Where am I going to be 3 months from now? Where am I going to be 6 months from now? Now, your specific industry, you might have clients and or customers that do come back to you regularly again and again and again and again, and you don't need a continual influx of new people. But if you do need a continuing influx, I would definitely recommend not cutting back on your advertising because they don't know you're there, they don't know you're open. You need those new people coming through. But even if you do have people that come regularly, if they're getting hit as well, they might be cutting back on their personal spending. So maybe they're not coming to you quite so much as they were before. So you are going to need that new influx of people. And then of course, I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't cut back on your accounting costs. And that's not just because of the world that I'm in and, you know, money and finance and all the rest of it. The amount of people we saw right at the beginning of this, when the government funding came out, again, go into panic mode because they hadn't done their financial statements for a number of years. They didn't know what their numbers were. So it made getting access to those funds really difficult. And again, it doesn't matter if it's government funding or regular banks, regular lenders. If you don't have your books in order, trying to get access to those funds becomes a real challenge. And then we get overwhelmed with, I really need you to do this for me. I really need them help. By the way, I have no money, so I can't pay you right now. I'll pay you afterwards. And all of that kind of goes, yeah, hold on a second. If I'm going to pick and choose which people I'm working with, because I now have an overwhelm of people I can be working with, I'm likely to be going to the ones that are like, okay, these guys are already somewhat in order and I'm just doing 3 months worth of catch up for them, as opposed to I've got 3 years worth that I need to be looking at. Same goes for, during tax season on personal tax returns. The amount of people that came into our office, they're like, hey, I'm a sole proprietor. And I know I earned more than $5,000 last year, but I didn't file my tax return. So now I have 2 years worth to file, 3 years worth to file. And there was actually quite the influx of people in March, April time that were suddenly coming in saying, hey, I'm a business owner. My receipts are a mess. Like, I know, I get it. It's going to be a challenge. But in order to get in access to those funds, I want to be able to show that I genuinely did earn enough money and I meet those parameters. So please don't cut back on your accounting costs either. Things like bonuses for owners and bigwigs and fat cats, probably not the best time to be going out with those big bonuses and then you're laying off the lower end members of staff. It doesn't do an awful lot for company morale. It doesn't do an awful lot for your public exposure. It's a good time to cut those back. New furnishings, like if it isn't absolutely desperate stakes right now, and if we've worked properly and carefully for the years beforehand, we shouldn't be getting to those crunch kind of times before we're spending on things like, repairs and improvements. If we can hold those off for a little while, great. That's part of the cash flow that says, hey, let's wait till we get out of this and we've kind of stabilized again. Then we'll look at buying those kind of things. And avoid the emotional spending. That people seem to think of emotional spending purely on a personal front. It absolutely happens in the business world as well, especially when you are the business owner, because you're the one that has full control over what it is you're spending. So that emotional spending now is not the time. Things that it's kind of up to you to make a decision of your own, depending on where your company is right now, where your industry stands in right now, is things like systems upgrades and new technology. If those things are truly going to help push you through these troubling times or really help you grow, might actually be a good idea to go, yeah, you know what, we are going to bite the bullet, we are going to pull the trigger. Let's actually spend a good solid amount of cash because we know it's going to help us get through the next couple of months, years, whatever we happen to be going in. So where you can cut without impacting quality or your future growth, by all means. But one of the examples I like to give is, how many times have you gone to a restaurant and you've gone, wow, this is amazing, this is fantastic, I love this place. And you know, you recommend it to all of your friends, but then maybe 6 months to a year later, you go back again and things seem to have changed, like the quality just isn't there. And that's often a case of the business owner trying to cut back on certain expenses. And what they've done is cut back on quality of produce. So when you're looking at what it is you're going to cut, make sure it's not going to be something that's going to impact the service or what it is you're, you know, passing over to your customer or client, because that's not a great cost-cutting measure at all. Moving on.
I have a question.
Absolutely, go for it.
Can you go back? The systems upgrade and the new technology. Joanne, I don't know if you find this in the chamber with your software. Everything is cloud-based or subscription-based now, and you have no choice but to pay that cost, or they'll basically shut you down from a software perspective. Can we use that for with the 40,000?
40,000 was for running costs, I believe. I didn't have to claim it myself. I believe you can, because it is all part of the operational costs.
Okay.
And I think that 40,000 was for exactly that, those, you know, like paying your rent. Not so much like your overhead expenses quite so much. I'm trying to explain this in such a way that I don't.
Well, rent is an overhead expense.
Yeah, but it's that very much operational kind of costs. Okay. So yes.
But so the basically line is the software upgrades. We have no choice. Like I say, the subscription base now will just shut you down if you don't pay it.
Yeah, and when I talk about upgrades, I'm talking about changing from where you are to something new. So if you're already kind of like paying for those subscriptions, and I do it too, I buy my QuickBooks Online subscription, and I've got my Zoom subscription, and you know, all of the others. So yes, but I would be asking myself, okay, is now a good time to go up a level on those subscriptions?
Oh, like an upgrade or something.
Right, an upgrade or something like that. So you wouldn't want to be cutting back on those, because those are the ones you need to run your business anyway. But depending on what your business is, if it makes sense now to bring in some new software, because we are doing a whole much more online. So would you be upgrading your website to have sales through your website, whereas you didn't before? Okay. Right, that actually could be a really good investment right now.
Yeah.
And there's going to be money behind it, but it makes sense to spend that kind of money.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions before we move on? Nothing in our little chat box? Okay. Thank you for the question. So when it comes to advertising, there's some out-of-the-box advertising I've seen personally from the different clients that I've worked with. So a story of a new startup business coach out in the Vancouver area. This person was bringing in pretty consistent revenues of about 20,000 per month, which was okay for a startup. That was pretty good. Had about $3,000 worth of expenses. He was paying between himself and a couple of other people about 12,000 in salaries, which left behind about 5K for taxes. Probably wasn't quite spending that much. There was a little bit left over, but not a lot. So he's pretty much going, okay, my business is healthy. However, I recognize that I'm actually running my business as if I'm running paycheck to paycheck. And just like running a household paycheck to paycheck is kind of a scary thing, you don't want to be running your business paycheck to paycheck either. You want to be able to grow that somehow. So the thought process is, okay, I need to have a little bit more left over at the end of each month. Do I cut back on some of my costs, or do I invest some money and try and grow my business? Well, being a business coach, he obviously decided to go, let's grow the business route, because generally that's the one that makes much more sense. So the reason we have a little boat here is what he did is just invite a whole bunch of people that he knew was his target client. So he'd already done his research on who it is he wants to be working with. He was very, very clear on that. And had probably already done a little of those soft touches to get to know people a little bit first. It's often referred to as, like, you know, the funnel marketing. You've already got your whole bunch of people up here that you know are like a warm audience, and you're going to funnel those down into the people that are going to be your actual clients. So he knew the type of people he wanted. He'd reached out to enough people and had soft touches with people already as to who would make really good clients for him. And he invited about, I think it was around 20, 25 people to one of the sunset cruises around Vancouver, all paid for out of his own pocket, completely free for you guys to come along. But he knew his sales pitch, for want of better words, had that evening of, you can call it networking. I guess it wasn't really networking for him. It was a sales location. It was him giving his sales pitch to a bunch of business owners that he thought would be a good fit for his business, and he would be a good fit for their business. Turns out it worked out rather well, because from that point onwards, we saw consistent revenues of 70,000 a month. That is a massive jump, and it went very, very quickly. From the day of that cruise, we're probably looking no more than about 6 weeks to 2 months before he consistently started seeing these revenues. Now, he was ready for the growth as well. He had people in place that could handle that growth. Because realistically, in those early days, I think he had like 3 people on, including himself, on the payroll. And he was probably overpaying them because they didn't have a huge amount of work to do. But he knew that this was the growth that he wanted. This is where he intended to be. So now these guys are busy. They do have full, you know, there's enough work to keep them going for the full day, for a full week. So the salaries went up a touch, right? He probably hired in one more person. The expenses went up a little bit because he had to have the structure in place to handle this extra workload. But, you know, and yeah, so the taxes went up as well, between personal taxes, payroll taxes, corporate taxes. All of that needed to be accounted for as well. But you can see that he actually has quite a lot of money left over now at the end of these months that's going into those, either as savings, you know, some of it, or other getting reinvested again. So it worked very, very well for him. But again, he's a business coach. He kind of understands all of those different facets of the business world. He knew exactly where he wanted to be, very clear on his vision, and was not afraid to put his hands in his pocket and spend a bit of money to make that happen. And you really can say the pivoting point of making that happen was paying for all of those people to come to that sunset cruise, listen to the pitch, and the conversion rate that he had was such that he like over tripled his revenues. So did very, very well there. Any questions around that? Any comments around that? I've had people say to me, well, it's easy to say, like, when you've got money. It's easy to say, you know, it's easy to do that when you're not living hand to mouth. Well, his business almost was living hand to mouth. He just knew that even if it meant taking out a small business loan to be able to put that on was a worthwhile investment. So that's the kind of advertising investing that you can do, that, as I say, is a little bit of out of the box advertising. Could have gone to imprint, could have gone to radio, does do networking events. The thing with times like this, where it's a very quick change all of a sudden, like we went from the beginning of March and everyone was pretty much fine. We were talking about this crazy illness that's going around, but that's just, you know, where it was at that point in time. At the beginning of March, everyone was still in business. But then by mid-March, we were pretty much all shut down. That's a very quick turnaround. And quite often when it comes to advertising for businesses, I'll say you've got 2 approaches. You can either spend a chunk of money and let the world know what you're doing quickly, but it's going to cost you. Or you can do the slower approach and the more sweat equity, where you turn up to more events to promote your business. You do a lot more in the way of networking to promote your business. That's still very valid. But even as somebody that owns a networking company or part owns a networking company, I will still tell you that networking is generally the slow approach. It's the gradual build up. Absolutely worthwhile. The results I've seen in it are great. But for these times when things happen very, very quickly, you often need to put your hand in your pocket, spend some money on getting advertising out there. People need to know you are open. People need to know what your new business practices are, especially in times like this. One that I haven't put a slide on here because it's actually very relevant and very new. I was reading a post in social media a little while ago of somebody locally that said, yes, they had that hit right at the beginning when everything shut down. They made the decision very quickly to not let go all of their staff. This was a restaurant, not let go of all of their staff, but go purely to home delivery. But they had to get the word out that we are now home delivery and that we are open for business. So whether you saw flyers in your door or big signage on their building, again, the imprint, whether it's, you know, locally, we've got What's On magazine is a great way to advertise. We've got the local newspaper is a great way to advertise. I do think people still read newspapers, local newspapers. And what he found was within a matter of, I think he said 4 to 6 weeks, he was back to the same numbers, the same revenue, the same income as what he was this time last year. The effect that it had was it wasn't minimal, it was a big effect, but it lasted for a short period of time because they changed very quickly, committed to what it is they were going to do. And within, as I say, 6 weeks, we're back to their normal numbers. So with a little bit of help, maybe from the bank or a little bit of help from the government, you can ride that wave quite easily. But it's having that, you know, I don't want to say strength of character because everyone's different, but just having that faith, I guess, in what it is you're doing in your business and that, you know, we are good enough that this is going to carry us through. So my other story that I've put in here is a story of a struggling business, but they were in a busy industry. This was an industry that was thriving, actually. And for some reason, this particular business just weren't generating the numbers they would expect to see. And it was a gradual decline. So I think they were like, it didn't hit them all at once, so it wasn't quite so obvious. And when you see a gradual decline, that's actually even more scary. Because first of all, they were like, okay, it's just a trend in the industry, it's going to be fine. But not really paying attention to the fact that others in their industry are doing big business. So why is it just us that seems to be having problems? So what they decided to do, because the cash was getting tight, was they cut out the cleaning company, the professional cleaning company that they had to come to their business. They cut back on advertising and they used lower quality supplies. The trouble is, particularly the cleaning company and the lower quality supplies, those are two things that their customers were particularly looking for. The industry that they were in, and because they are local industries, these, I don't want to get too kind of much information about, you know, local companies. It's in our industry, we're not supposed to give away too much information about other people's businesses. But those two things were quite important to their business. But then also they cut advertising. So again, when you cut advertising, it has a negative effect. You need that advertising for a constant influx of new customers. So they weren't getting that either. So the customer numbers began to decline. And guess what? You cut your cleaning company and you cut your supply, or you lower your quality of supplies. Guess who's picking up that stuff? The staff that work there. So they weren't happy either, because now they're doing all of the extra cleaning work. They're working with things that aren't, you know, as nice to work with as they were before. The staff aren't very happy. And when you have unhappy staff, that in itself can be very detrimental to your business. You don't want a high turnover of staff. And quite often it's not so much the money that people are getting paid. Obviously that is important, but a lot of times when you ask people, okay, why is it you're leaving? They're on that exit interview. It's more often than not the conditions that they're working in rather than the cash that they were receiving. So when you start doing those kind of cutbacks, now it's hitting your staff's working conditions and they're not happy either. It takes very, very loyal staff to go through that kind of decline for a long period of time. Again, a wave, you can kind of ride it out, but if it's a constant decline, now we've got bigger problems going on. So what happened within this company? The salaries were cut and they were extremely fortunate, and it just goes to show the level of staff that they had, that the staff all agreed that they would all take a reduce in pay rather than somebody having to get let go, which I think was amazing. That in itself shows me that you've got the right people in this room, if they're prepared to look out for each other like that. So that was great. But over years, the savings gradually dwindled away. I wasn't privy to exactly how much this company had in savings before I came along. I was led to believe that we're looking at six figures. I never saw anything kind of black and white that went back that far, but that's what I was led to believe. At one point, they had in the realm of about six figures in savings, and we were dwindling fast. When I got there, they had approximately, I would say, between 6 and 9 months left for things to change, or they were going to have to close. They were literally just going to run out of money. And that was very, very upsetting because it was a great business. They were a wonderful business. And as I say, they were in an industry where they should have been thriving. So it wasn't industry specific. We knew there was something going on here. So there were some big changes that needed to happen. And when you have to make quick, drastic changes like that, it can be quite a challenge getting people to agree to those changes, especially when the mindset has been, we need to cut costs, we need to cut costs, we need to cut costs. Because when you cut costs, you know, you're like down, 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 down. Eventually you get to this until there's just nothing left and now your business is gone. So we needed a little paradigm shift going on here. So what did we do? We set a budget for advertising. And because we only had that 6 to 9 months left, we knew we couldn't do the low and slow kind of thing. You still want to be doing that low and slow kind of advertising, the networking, the getting out to events and meetings, and the community events is a great way to showcase your business. And I always encourage you to do that, because even if you're having to spend a bunch of money to begin with to boost your business, if you've been doing those kind of networking events and getting the company name out there, you can then cut back on your advertising, because your low and slow then is now beginning to show some return on investments too. So it's always good to do both. But if you're crunched for time, you've got to spend some money. So we set a budget for advertising. We set a budget for signage so that, again, people knew. Signs right out front of the building. We are open. We have space. So when, you know, other people were saying, hey, we're too busy, I can't take on new clients, I can't take on new customers, these guys were saying, I have space, you can come to us. And we did put in, as I say, a little bit of sweat equity, but there was no time for slow advertising. And then the one that really took a little bit of selling to the ownership there was hiring professionals to do the things that you're not great at. Because they had a lot of people wanting to go, well, I can do that, I can do that, I'll put my hand up to, you know, cover that bit for you. And if that is not your expertise, as much as it comes from a, you know, a heart-centered place to say, hey, yeah, I'll help do the layout for the advertising, I'll help do that, that's not your world. And it is not going to look as good and professional if it's not your world. So hire the right people to do the right job. Again, in the finance world, I get an awful lot of people going, well, I can just do that on a spreadsheet and it doesn't cost me anything. Okay, but the information you're going to get on a spreadsheet is just 1/10 of the kind of information you're going to get from a proper accounting software package. So spend the money and go the proper accounting software package. I have yet to meet a person who can genuinely say they can run their business and they know all of their financials based off of the back of the spreadsheet. It just doesn't happen. Different conversation for another time, because I will get on my soapbox if I carry on down that path. So we set the budget for advertising, we set a budget for signage. We did put in some sweat equity for advertising, knowing that that wasn't going to help us right this second, but it will help us 6 months, 9 months, a year down the line. And we did hire professionals to do their thing. What happened after that? It took a couple of years. I'm not going to say this was an instant overnight success. It took a couple of years to even get to break even. But what we saw was the trend line. So the amount of money that was being, you know, the losses became smaller and smaller. So we managed to stretch that kind of what we did have left in savings. We managed to stretch that as best as possible. As soon as we started seeing some money coming into the business, a lot of people were going, well, hey, now you need to get your staff salaries back to where they were. Come on, we need to start paying these people a bit more again. And I was the one that was going, hold on, guys, I know we want to do that, and that's a very warm and fuzzy feeling. Good business decisions often don't come from an emotional place. You've got to take the emotion out of those business decisions and see what is in the best interest of the company. So we didn't, that break-even year, we didn't suddenly go, okay, let's start paying the people the same as what we were paying them before. We had the conversation with them. We said, hey, look, guys, bear with us that little bit longer. Give us another couple of years to actually start making some really good money, and then we can jump you back up. Not back up just to where you were, but we'll be able to like jump you even a little higher and start bringing in some extra benefits. We can see the trend line. Let's keep that trend line going, so that once we get up here, now we can really start doing some great things for you guys. And fortunately, again, had the right people in the room. We had the right staff involved. They're like, okay, we'll bear with it a little bit longer. But there was a lot of mini celebrations going on that break-even year. The growth couple of years was an even bigger celebration. And I remember that the first growth year, the profit at the end of the year was like less than $1,000, but it was still huge to us, because for the amount of times that there hadn't been any profit, to then just see, just 3 figures at the bottom of the line, but it was the plus number and not a negative number, was huge. If you was to look at that growth line from there, it had gone down, very slowly, curved, started to come up, and then it went boom, straight up. Profit year on year grew. And at that point, once you turn that curve, the getting them back to where they were, even I was amazed at how quickly they managed to get back to, hey, look, there's your 6 figures sitting in your savings account again. On top of making sure that the staff were well taken care of at that point. Hey, we realize that you've been without, for a while. Here's a bonus at the end of this year, like just an injection of cash to you guys as a bonus. Thank you. And we're increasing your salaries back, not just to where they were, but we're taking into consideration that you actually should have been getting wage increases over these last couple of years and you didn't. So very happy staff. They were happy that they held in with us as well. Didn't have to do the cleaning anymore, yay, because you could hire cleaners and that kind of stuff again. Very, very happy. And a very successful, thriving business where they now are like, hey, I'm not sure we can take any more clients and customers because we're feeling a little overwhelmed ourselves. So a good overwhelmed feeling to be. So growth year on year ever since. Any more questions around that? Other than asking me who the company was, because I won't tell you. Anything in the chat box that we're asking? Nope. Oh, okay. We shall move on. So when it comes to making those spending decisions, there are some things you kind of want to take into consideration. Again, I'm going to come back to please know your numbers, because without accurate financial information, it's really difficult to make those solid spending decisions. You've got to know where you are, and you've got to know where those spending decisions are going to take you. And I get that cash flow projections are just that, they're a projection. You can never be 100% sure. Nobody has a crystal ball. But once you've been doing it for a little while, and again, if you reach out to an expert, especially an expert that knows your industry, they will have a pretty solid idea. It's an educated guess rather than a shot in the dark kind of guess. So you can get some pretty good numbers even on those projections. And you want to set those budgets. You want to go, okay, not just to sit there and say, yeah, she's absolutely right, we should spend some money on advertising, and then just go out and buy a whole page ad in the magazine and buy a whole page ad in the newspaper and get your 30 seconds ad on the local radio, and then all of a sudden go, oh, I didn't realize that was going to cost me 10 grand. It wouldn't cost you 10 grand. I'm just throwing out numbers. But you want to be able to know how much is it I can actually afford to spend that's going to show me a good return on investment. Then you want to know, okay, how is this going to impact me going forward? Yes, I'm going to spend the money now. The idea is it's an investment and I get way more back in returns from that investment. And it will allow you to apply for those loans if necessary. There is nothing wrong with applying for loans when you have, you know, your financials in order. A lot of people do it. A lot of people get through these times or kickstart their business. If you're going through just a growth kind of stage of your business, applying for loans is not such a bad thing. I remember my grandfather years ago, who was one of the best business owners, business minds I ever knew. And back in his day, he could barely read and write, but one of the best business minds I knew. For him, going into debt was almost sinful. Like back in those days, and I think that's probably where this whole thing of not wanting to admit that we need to apply for a loan, or not wanting to admit that we've, you know, needed that cash injection from somewhere else. People don't seem to want to talk about it, but there's nothing wrong with, even if it's putting some stuff on your credit card for a little while, as long as you have that plan in place to pay off your credit card, as long as you're not merging business credit expenses to personal business expenses, you want to keep those very, very separate. There's nothing wrong in it. It can be a really good way to run your business, a really good investment for your business. So those are the ways you want to make those decisions, and make those decisions based on, how does it affect me right now? How does it affect me in 3 months' time? How does it affect me in 6 months' time? And then even going on from that, because where we are right now, I don't see us getting out of this businessy kind of thing for a good couple of years. And I've said this before, that even if our businesses kind of get back within a year, the tax implications from the government spending all the money that they've spent recently has to get clawed back from somewhere. And it's very likely to come from business licenses, property taxes, business taxes, personal taxes. So all of those things are going to come into play as well. So you're going to want to know how your spending affects all of those different things as well. That's going to go on for a while. They're going to be having to refill this pot that they've spent out of for a long time coming yet. Okay, we're almost getting ready to wrap up here. Any other questions? We've flown through. Nope. Okay. So a quick recap. I'm not saying you should not save whatsoever. Saving is for the personal side. Saving is for making sure you personally, I think a lot of us were in forced saving for a couple of months there anyway. I met a number of people who said, actually, we're doing okay. Like, you know, the kids have been pulled out of their skating classes, so I'm not paying for that, or their swimming classes, or their, you know, the fees and subscriptions that, you know, you've been paying out for all that kind of stuff. We weren't eating out for a while, but now eating out and getting takeaway is, you know, this huge, great community spirited thing. So that's marvelous. But yeah, for a lot of people, it's like, actually, it's forced us to self-save, and that's good. I don't think it was the brightest idea to be buying 3 years worth of toilet paper and spending cash on 3 years worth of toilet paper, and having 3 years worth of cash sitting in the back of your garage or in your basement or anything like that. That is not a good use of your cash right now, to have that sitting there. There are more other things. I've often wondered how many people spent all of their cash on supplying things that we were all told you didn't really need, and then reached out to their bank and said, hey, I need to have a 3-month deferral on my mortgage. Having not really the best grip of, you might not be paying that mortgage and you think you're saving money, but interest is still accruing, and now it's interest on top of interest on top of interest. So you actually would have been way better off not spending everything on, you know, an entire room full of pasta and pasta sauce, and actually putting money towards your bills. It would have been a wiser idea. So personal, business, it's the same thing. Spend on the business level. Let your customers know that you are open for business. Let your customers know what is new in your business. I actually heard somebody else say that because we can't shake hands anymore, it has a unconscious impact on your customers if they see handshakes on your web page. So people are going through their websites and just changing pictures and changing the wording so that it is more honest in, you know, the world that we're living in right now. And if you're a bigger company and that's the kind of stretch that you have, then yeah, it makes sense to do that. And then, you know, all of the other things that you might be needing right now. Hairdressers letting you know that, hey, these are our protocols that we have in place. When you come to us, we will be wearing a mask. We do have hand sanitizer stations all around the, our salon. Having all of that information out there, that might not seem like advertising to you, but you're advertising what your business is doing in the current global state of affairs that we're in. And that goes a long way. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say advertising. One of the greatest pieces of advertising I've actually seen here in Mission is, for those of you that drive along 7th very often, the coffee place by the leisure center that's completely dark, blacked out. Clearly there's nobody in it. And there are signs all over the window saying, we are open. And you think, you must be crazy. No, you're not open. And it's like, yes, we are open, just not at this location. Go to the location just a click down the road, and we will see you there. We are open. Brilliant advertising. Brilliant. And I'm sure they've done very well out of it, because I drive that road quite regularly, and I'm always seeing cars coming in and out of the second location. So it's clearly working for them. So I don't know how much they had to spend on just getting some signage done for their windows, because the 7th Avenue location is clearly the one that's going to get more drive past traffic. It's clearly the one that gets like the walking traffic. But for whatever business reason they decided that that's the one they were going to keep closed, they're going to open the other location, but the signage has been done very, very well. And you can't miss it. Like, as you walk past, it hits you in the face. We are open. So that's the kind of thing I'm getting at. And then lastly, you do need accurate data. Without that accurate data, you are going to be struggling, and not just struggling from a practical standpoint of, being able to go and get those loans, being able to get those grants, but struggling up here too with decision-making processes, and just that worry of, okay, what am I doing now? When you've got that accurate data, I'm not going to say all of the worry goes away. I'd be completely lying to you. But a lot of that worry and a lot of that stress does go away. You're making decisions based on factual data rather than emotional information. So there's that as well. And again, unless there's any more questions, we will be wrapping it up pretty soon.
Myself. No, I was just going to say that your information, Donna, is always on point, and even more so right now. We were able to, the chamber was, BC Chamber and Canadian Chamber gave some really great webinars, and they're speaking the exact same language you have been speaking today, and encouraging us to do.
They're talking about toilet paper too?
Well, not toilet paper so much, unless I could have missed that point. But it was really about, we all had to look at our financial forecasts. We all had to think of the worst case scenarios. We had to also appreciate where the strengths were, and where, they pointed out things like 20% of our income comes from, 80% of our income comes from 20% of our product. So what are we doing well? Highlighted all those pieces. And it's not always sexy to look at it. You make it way more fun than those webinars were, but 100% necessary. And we did, you do it because you're told to do it, and just do it. And I think you can't say that enough. So thank you for making it a little more fun and interesting. And I'm going to pass off to Janessa here for the wrap-up.
Actually, if I can jump in right there, you made a very interesting point, in that it's not just a case of, when I say know your data, and a lot of people go, well, these are my sales and these are my expenses, which is great. That's a great starting point. But do you know which of your sales is making you the most money? Do you know which of your sales is costing you more to provide? And it could be those that are costing you more to provide are the ones that are making you the most money. So it can get quite detailed, and it can get quite technical. And then you absolutely want somebody who knows what they're talking about. Because saying, well, my sales are going down, or this is happening, it's like, well, let's look at the why it's happening, and let's look at which bit is and which bit isn't. Do we let go of this offering and really push this offering? Like before, most of our sales were coming from restaurants where people are sitting down in chairs. Now, none of my revenue is coming from there. It's all from takeout. So knowing those things is a pretty big deal. Yeah, it's really going to help you get through. Carry on.
That's awesome. No, exactly what Joanne said is thank you. Like that information is so good. And especially the like advertising, like pay for advertising. Because I hear the same thing from a lot of businesses is that's the first thing that they cut. But you need to showcase that you're still open, like 7th Avenue, showcase that you're still doing business and showcase the new things that you did. So I love that business coach story. I definitely wrote that one down because just trying something new and just doing that initial investment to get business growing and then got to see it triple revenues. Like that's not bad. All of us want that. So that was awesome. Thank you very much, Donna, for that. I am going to do just a quick little plug. I just put in the chat our business walk survey. So it's a yearly survey that we do with as the Mission Chamber of Commerce with the Mission business community. Normally we would walk around and actually visit businesses. Obviously due to COVID-19, we are taking it a little bit more virtual. Today is the last day for just doing the survey. It's 5 questions and we're doing it per sector. So I do encourage you just to take a minute out of your day, have your voice being heard. A lot of this information does get collected. It is confidential, but we use it to work with government, Minister Robinson, and a bunch of different other aspects. So please, if you're on the call, I do encourage you to just take a minute to fill out that survey. But with that, I do want to bring everyone's attention to Donna's contact information that's on the screen here. Great information, wonderful person to work with because you got the humor, which we enjoy as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Donna. And I think that that's all that we have from us today, but we do really appreciate your time and everyone's time for joining us on this call as well.
One last thing that I forgot to say earlier. We didn't plan this, I swear, we didn't communicate this, but I remember seeing that in a couple of days, isn't there like a spend mission or there's something I've been seeing from you guys about spending
It's the
money.
big spend. It's the big
That's the one.
spend. Yes, thank you for, it actually came through an affiliate to the Kamloops Chamber, and it's the big spend. It's on July 24th. It's all over Facebook. There is a website, The Big Spend, and it's just really a way to remind us all to go out and shop locally, support locally, and highlight what you've been doing. And it's a great and a homegrown initiative. So it's pretty exciting to see it coming. Thank you for that, Donna.
Yeah, no, I did smile when I saw it. I was like, this is perfect. I'm here telling people you got to spend some money. And then 10 days later, you get the chance to do it. Go for it.
All right, I just put the Big Spend link in the chat too, if anyone did want to see it, which is perfect. But overall, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much again, Donna, and everyone enjoy this day because we are hoping that it stays like this for the rest of the summer. But it's at least like that today. So do enjoy and take care.
Bye. Thanks, everyone, for coming.